The day I closed my eyes and lay in the hospital bed, my memories had faded to the point where I almost didn't recognize anyone anymore. But I still remember Bach Nutuet's face clearly. In my dying moments, I tried my best to give her one last smile. After 50 years of marriage, will there ever be a day when you love me? I saw her hesitate in her heart. I have the answer. I looked around the room, which was filled with my descendants and Bach Nutuet, and said the last words. If there is an afterlife, I don't want to love you anymore. Having finished speaking, I closed my eyes. When I woke up, I discovered I was alive again. God gave me a chance. I decided that in this life, I will no longer be involved with Bach Nutuet. But unexpectedly, 3 months before the university entrance exam, she suddenly transferred schools in the same class and specifically asked to sit at the same table as me. Instinctively, I moved my chair away, wanting to avoid her. But I didn't expect her to grab my collar and laugh evilly. Mi Phuong Vien, you died so quickly in your past life? What for? I haven't had time to answer your question yet. When I woke up again, I found myself back in time 3 months before the university entrance exam. I got acquainted with this young body and looked at the friends around me who were attentively listening to the lecture. This is not a dream. Perhaps because of my strong wish before I died in my previous life, I was actually reincarnated. God gave me this opportunity. In this life, I will have nothing to do with Bach Nutuet anymore. In my previous life, because the Bach family's company was in trouble, they proposed to marry my family to cooperate with my family's company. Bach Nutuet is famous for being a talented female student, Hoc Ba, who later became an international violinist. As for me, I was just an individual student. I took the university entrance exam and got a third-class degree. Then, according to my family's arrangements, I joined the family company as an apprentice, then took over my father's position. Because Bach Nutuet is both beautiful and understanding, my father happily agreed to this marriage, and so did I. But at that time, Bach Nutuet already had someone she liked. The Bach family forced them to break up so that Bach Nutuet could marry me. After getting married, Bach Nutuet was never happy, no matter how well I treated her. No matter how many things she did, she never smiled at me. So, before I died, I asked her, in the past 50 years, has there been a day when she loved me? The truth proves that even 50 years cannot move her heart. In this life, I won't be involved with her anymore. But in terms of cooperation between the Bach family and my family, I will not interfere. Because in a few years, the Bach family's company scale will grow dramatically, and the Phuong family will also benefit a lot. Therefore, there is no problem in cooperating with the Bach family. I will not interfere. I just don't need the Bach family to sell their daughter to me anymore. What I need to do is focus on studying, making up for the regrets of my previous life, then taking advantage of the knowledge accumulated over 50 years, fulfilling my father's will, and bringing the company's products to the world. During the time before the university entrance exam, I studied like crazy. My friends were a little surprised to see my changes. Phuong Vien, after school, you don't go play basketball or smoke anymore. Are you possessed? I smiled and replied. I came here from 50 years later. In my previous life, I didn't get into an important university. I regretted it a lot, so I wanted to make up for it. Of course, my table mates considered me crazy. An individual student like me asking for a key university entrance exam is truly a daydream. I also don't care what others say. Anyway, I don't believe I can do it. Half a month after coming back to life, my father called to tell me to come home early from school. There's a guest tonight. By the way, they asked me to buy a gift for my daughter. I know the Bach family is coming. Bach Nutuet is here. In my previous life, I thought that when I was still a student, lipstick or a handbag didn't seem to suit me. So I spent a lot of effort buying several large gift bags, including dolls, toys, and handicrafts. But as a result, Bach Nutuet just glanced at it and said, "Child, in the future living with someone like you is hard to imagine how difficult it will be." In this life, I still buy several large gift bags, but they are all toys, even more childish. Cars, Barbie dolls, remote-controlled racing cars. Most of them are children's toys. I carried several large gift bags home, and once again saw 18-year-old Bach Nutuet. I'm still a bit stunned. She is still as noble and beautiful, exuding a noble temperament. In my previous life, just this time we met, I was fascinated by her. But this time, just for a moment, I didn't look at her anymore. No matter how beautiful she is, I know she doesn't belong to me. In this life, I don't want to have anything to do with her. My dad saw me coming home, saw the pile of things in my hand, winked at me, then pretended not to know. My son met Tuette for the first time and bought so many gifts for her. Why don't I see you treat me so well? I was too lazy to pay attention to him, so I directly carried several large gift bags into the living room and casually threw them down, the toys inside scattered everywhere. The wheel of the remote-controlled racing car was also broken. I wiped my hands and said to Tuette, who kept a cold expression, "My father told me to buy you a gift." Time was tight. I bought it at a roadside stall. I didn't have time to go to the big supermarket to buy better things. My dad saw a pile of toys for 3-year-olds and angrily picked up a cooking spoon and tried to hit me, but I wasn't afraid. In my previous life, I was 70 years old. My father is now less than 40 years old. Logically speaking, I am the elder. I lied down on the sofa, put my feet up, and spoke in the same comforting tone as in my previous life. My grandson is all grown up, but he doesn't look like an adult at all. He doesn't look like a normal person. My father, Tuette, and her parents were all stunned. After a while, my father smiled a bit awkwardly and said, my son and I have a normal good relationship. There are no outsiders to talk to or pay attention to, so he doesn't consider everyone to be outsiders." When Tuette's parents heard that, their faces relaxed and they smiled brightly. Only Tuette still kept a cold expression and frowned. Does she think I still want to be family with her in this life? In this life, I don't want to waste 50 years with someone who doesn't love me. I walked up to her and said coldly, "If you don't like the gift I bought, then I'll take it away and play with it myself." Having finished speaking, I was about to pack up my things, but she snatched a Barbie doll from my hand, showed a smile that I had never seen before, and said, "I like it very much." To my surprise, she smiled at me. What the hell is this? It's so absurd. This was the first time in 50 years of knowing her that she smiled at me. Could it be that she isn't Tuette, or has someone snatched her body? Or is this Barbie doll really in her heart? I'm lazy to think. No matter what, I won't have anything to do with her in this life. I immediately snatched the Barbie doll back with a cold expression. "Sorry, I bought this Barbie doll for myself. The rest is hers." Everyone is confused. My father couldn't help but scold me for being sick, because today I was very unusual. I thought that would make Tuette angry, and then Don't Quiet had sex. Unexpectedly, she held the toys I bought on her face and smiled. In my previous life, I bought her jewelry and handbags worth hundreds of thousands, millions, and she didn't say a word to me. Her hobby is children's toys. I find her difficult to understand. Dinner begins. My father and her parents tried their best to support her, but I did not waver. Although she didn't say anything, I knew in her heart she was very opposed, because she has a childhood friend who is 1 year younger than her. In my previous life, I heard that Tuette planned to confess her love to her childhood friend after graduating from high school. My appearance divided them. Therefore, in this life I will do it for them. I just hope that in this life I will no longer have any entanglement with Tuette. Late at night, when the family of 3 was preparing to go home, I didn't say a word to her. My dad pulled me to see them out the door. Tuette suddenly said she forgot her school bag on the sofa. My dad asked me to go get it for her, so I reluctantly took out my school bag and gave it to her. She calmly told me a thank you. She even said thank you to me, which was the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in 2 lifetimes. I coldly did not answer, turned around, and entered the room. Behind me, I heard my father constantly explaining, saying that I was in a bad mood recently, that it wasn't normal, and that I hoped it wouldn't affect our marriage. If my father knew that I was unhappy in my previous life until my death, would he still be happy for me and someone who doesn't love me? The next day, I went to school as usual. In the middle of class, the homeroom teacher said there was a new student transferring in today. Then, that person walked in. I was stunned, because the new student was Tuette. The homeroom teacher briefly introduced her and then asked Tuette to sit at the front desk. Tuette's achievements at the #1 high school were always at the top. Coming to my 3rd high school, it's not an exaggeration to say that I was top of the whole school. Tuette is beautiful and dresses in a young way. The boys in the class all enthusiastically welcomed Tuette, wanting her to sit with them, but when the homeroom teacher glared at them, they withdrew. The homeroom teacher arranged for Bok Nu Tuet to sit next to the class monitor. The class president's previous deskmate dropped out of school due to family matters, so that position is still vacant. Unexpectedly, Bok Nu Tuet shook her head, walked straight towards me, then held out her hand and smiled politely. We meet again. Can I sit next to you? I was stunned. She is talking to me. Before I could think too much, I heard Bok Nu Tuet ask, Phuong Vien, can I sit next to you? The homeroom teacher also came over at this time, hastily told her that I was the student in the class, and told her not to sit with me, so she should sit with the class president. The class president is the best student in the school and can study together to complement each other. I'm not angry after hearing this. After all, it's the truth. In high school, although I was not a bad student, I often skipped class and went online to play football. I can single-handedly bring down the class average by 2 or 3 points. Because he didn't do anything else bad, the homeroom teacher also closed his eyes. Bok Nu Tuet refused the homeroom teacher, smiled and said, Thank you for your good intentions, but I want to sit with Phuong Vien. I know him. The homeroom teacher frowned, then looked at me carefully, telling me not to affect other people's studies. Bok Nu Tuet's achievement is that she can pass the exam as valedictorian. In her previous life, although Bok Nu Tuet was not the valedictorian, she was also a flower detective. The reason why she was detective was because she learned that she had to get engaged to my family, separating her from her childhood friend, so she didn't do well in the exam. Therefore, the new homeroom teacher considered her a treasure. If Bok Nu Tuet passes as valedictorian, the homeroom teacher will definitely be promoted, his salary increased, and his reputation in the school will also increase significantly. But these things have nothing to do with me. In this life, I just want to pass the university entrance exam, study finance well, then take advantage of 50 years of knowledge from my previous life to help my family develop further. Thinking of this, I coldly raised my hand to block the seat next to me. I'm used to sitting alone. I don't want anyone sitting next to me. Furthermore, classmate Bok Nu Tuet, you and I didn't know each other before. We only met once last night. She changed her place, lest it affect her studies. The whole class was silent. No one expected me to refuse such a talented student. Bok Nu Tuet was stunned for a moment, but quickly recovered the arrogant and domineering look that I was familiar with. He directly put his school bag on the table, then pushed my hand away and sat down. This place is not yours. I can sit if I want. I have faced this face for 50 years. Now as soon as I see it, I feel uncomfortable. I don't understand how I was able to persevere for 50 years in my previous life. I directly slammed the book in my hand on the table, startling her. Okay, you can sit wherever you like. I have no right to interfere. Having finished speaking, I packed up my books, took my belongings, and went to the place next to the trash can. This place often has garbage, so it smells. This seat is only used to store miscellaneous items. I directly pushed down the miscellaneous items, put my bag on it, then picked up the basketball on the ground and waved to my friends sitting at the last table. Those people understood and immediately followed me to play football. In the classroom, the homeroom teacher's scolding voice rang out. What a worm that spoils the soup. But I consider it all as wind blowing in my ears. I didn't harm her good student. The kids who came with me don't need me to harm them. They're already a ruined pot of soup. Who says poor students are bad students? Moreover, the future of these people will all develop very well. Even the poorest people can buy a house in the capital. Although people are not good at studying, this does not represent dignity and ability. It is just that they are not interested in learning. All morning, I was too lazy to go to school with those people and play football all day. At noon, after playing the last game, I planned to buy ice. Suddenly, a figure came and gave me a bottle of water. For you, no ice. Just after exercising, it's best not to drink cold drinks. My friends all looked at me and smiled. Phuong Vien, I didn't expect you to have such great charisma. We admire you so much. That's right. It's still water without ice, so thoughtful. I glared at them. Don't talk nonsense. Next time I'll let you guys taste a dunk on the head. I'm 1.8 m tall and am a member of the basketball team. Of course it's not a problem to dunk. After that, I looked at Bok Nu Tuet. My expression became cold again. No need. I'm used to drinking ice water. Although our two families have cooperated in business, the marriage thing that my father mentioned is considered abandoned. I know she has a childhood friend. They have a very good relationship, and she also likes him very much. And I'm not interested in you, so we don't need to know each other. My father's matter, I will say for myself, will not affect the business cooperation between our two families. So, it's good for you and me. Having finished speaking, I returned the water bottle to her, then took the basketball and left. Instead of getting involved in an unclear relationship, as if I died in my previous life without closing my eyes, it would be better to cut it off early in the day. Because the school is not far from home, less than 20 minutes, I usually go home at noon to eat and rest. At the bus stop, I was about to get on the bus when Bach Nutuet came running from afar, with an unsightly look on her face, pulling me back. I knew she was angry because I had just refused to accept her water. Anyway, it was like that in my previous life, from the time I got married until I passed away at the age of 70. If I was the least bit dissatisfied with her, or the slightest bit rejected by her, she would immediately get angry. But in this life, she is no longer my wife, no longer the person I love. I will not give in to her anymore. I was just about to forcefully push her hand away, but unexpectedly her strength suddenly increased, pushing me into the bus stop. With both hands holding my shoulders tightly, his voice was a bit reproachful. Phuong Vien, don't think you're the only one who's alive. If you continue to treat me like that, I believe I will tell your father. Are you bullying his future daughter-in-law? My mind was blank and spinning. It took me a while to regain my composure. Bach Nutuet also came back to life. Seeing me stunned and saying nothing, she continued, Phuong Vien, I was your wife in my previous life. Married for 50 years, you didn't have the heart to raise your voice at me. In this life, tell me, from yesterday to today, how many times have you yelled at me? Looking at her, tears in her eyes, a bit of self-pity. I frowned. She really came back to life too. But from the first time we met yesterday to today, all her expressions were completely different from Bach Nutuet in her previous life. It's like someone snatched my body. With the personality of Bach Nutuet in her youth, she was the queen of the marketplace. In her old age, she was the head of the family, known as Bach Lao Tai. Outside influence is bigger than me. Don't talk about her age in front of me. Even if she suffered, she still couldn't say a word to me. If I don't understand, I'm too lazy to think. After all, it's back to life, so everyone makes up for their own regrets. In her previous life, she was separated from her childhood friend, was forced by her family to marry me, and was unhappy her whole life. In my previous life, I married someone who didn't love me, and my father worked himself to death because of the company. In the end, my outcome, in addition to dying without closing my eyes, also included not fulfilling my father's will, bringing the company's products to the world, and holding a grudge for the rest of my life. I looked at Bach Nutuet and said seriously, Bach Nutuet, if you are also resurrected, that would be even better. In this life, I will not disappoint you and your childhood friend. You also don't need to approach me because you want your family and my family to cooperate. In your previous life, you married into my family, and after so many years of living, you know that my father and I are not that type of people. What's more, in your previous life, you were the queen of commerce, possessing knowledge. Okay, even without my family's help, it's enough for your life to be glorious once again. Having said this, I took a breath. After all, I have loved this woman for 50 years. Letting go is indeed a bit uncomfortable. But having experienced despair before death in my previous life, I couldn't love her anymore. I also understand a principle. Instead of pursuing someone who doesn't love you, it's better to wait for someone who is only you in his eyes. At least that person's world is all about loving me. Now I will vow to use all my strength to love someone who loves me. But I won't love someone who doesn't love me anymore. Bach Nutuet, goodbye. Having finished speaking, I was about to turn around and leave. At this time, a person driving an electric motorbike stopped in front of us. The driver took off his window and smiled at Bach Nutuet. My sisters are coming to pick me up. Tell me why you smile so beautifully. I have to drive an extra half an hour every day to pick you up. I know this young man driving an electric motorbike is Bach Nutuet's childhood friend, named Vong Dang. The family worked as an electronics manufacturer, but later lost a lot of money. They said they didn't develop as well, but they still had a lot more money than normal people. Since starting, Bach Nutuet has been a partner of the electronics factory, but later withdrew. Bach Nutuet and Vong Dang, of course, grew up together since childhood. Because Vong Dang's father's business did not prosper, He gradually had less control over him, so he hung out with some bad boys and became a racing teenager. But he treated Bach Nu Tuet very well, did not drag Bach Nu Tuet into the water, and turned into a racing girl. Perhaps in Bach Nu Tuet's eyes, this is the reason why she always misses Vong Dang. He became a teenager racing cars, and then could not bear to hurt Bach Nu Tuet, causing Bach Nu Tuet to become a spoiled girl. At this time, Vong Dang and I still didn't know each other, but I also didn't want to know each other. Glancing at him, I turned around and left. Behind him came the sound of Bach Nu Tuet stomping his feet. Phuong Vien, you bastard. Arriving at the intersection and waiting for the red light, I instinctively turned around and saw Bach Nu Tuet getting on Vong Dang's electric motorbike. I don't have any attachment to her anymore. She ended up getting on her childhood friend's electric motorbike. I looked at the bright sunlight. Tears fell. Anything that has been in love for a long time and is as respectful as new is nonsense. I poured all my heart and soul into loving her for 50 years, and then coming back to life after 50 years, the love is still not as good as that of my childhood friend. When I got home, I took a few days off, not wanting to go to school to see her. Even though my father was angry, he couldn't do anything to me. Because my mother passed away early, he pampered his only son very much, basically following my wishes. After resting for a few days, I told my dad that I wanted to change schools. My father looked at me seriously. The college entrance exam is about to take place. Why are you changing schools? Moreover, your fiancée specifically moved to join you from the #1 high school. Now that you're changing schools, what should she do? I deliberately waved my hand angrily. I never agreed, Dad. I said I don't like her, and moreover, she has someone she likes. That person is not me. Forced marriage won't work. If you continue to force me, I will jump from the 3rd floor to find Mom. Although this villa only has 3 floors, it is more than 10 meters high. The head touches the ground first. No need to say much. Of course someone will come and take it away. Every time I threatened my mother, my father was very effective. This time too, I am very similar to my mother. My father often secretly looked at my mother's photo in his room and shed tears. If you lose me, I'm afraid there will be no more hope for your whole life. He could only agree. Okay, calm down. I will contact the school for you. I just smiled at my dad. This is my good dad. Don't worry, as long as you change schools, your son will pass the entrance exam to an important university. After that, he will work hard to study finance and come back to help Dad strive for his career together. Mom in heaven has a spirit. God bless us both, father and son, to become more and more prosperous. My father was so moved that he hugged me and cried for a long time. As a result, the next day, my father sold me out. White as Snow came to her house and pushed open the door to my room. I was still sleeping, dreaming. Opening my eyes, I only saw her familiarly walking to the window and pulling the curtains open. The sunlight immediately shone in, so bright that I couldn't open my eyes. I was a little angry and said, "White as Snow, you're crazy. This is my house. Why did you suddenly barge into my room?" White as Snow crossed his arms across his chest and said very naturally, "My house, my room. This lady has been here for 50 years. This is also my house, my room. She is still the voice of her previous life. In my previous life, she and I got married in this villa. And my room, of course, also became the wedding room." She directly opened my wardrobe and took out the clothes and underwear I usually wear. Then pulled my blanket, because I like to sleep naked, so my body was directly exposed to her. I quickly covered myself with clothes. "White as Snow, are you sick?" White as Snow looked at me naked, touched my chin, and smiled. His habit of sleeping without wearing anything, it turns out, now exists. I also thought, "Fuck off. Go away." I shouted, "What if I don't get out? I have oppressed you for 50 years. Even if you come back to life, do you think you can escape from my hands?" White as Snow smiled at me. This made me even more angry. In my previous life, she and I got married not long ago. I know she doesn't like me, has no feelings for me. I asked for a divorce, but she refused, using the excuse of being pregnant. Also said, "This life is just like that, temporarily living through the days that God gave her the opportunity so she doesn't have to be with me. Why do you have to bother with me? White as Snow, what you do only makes me hate you, only makes me gradually hate you." After she finished speaking, she was stunned. I didn't pay attention to her anymore and dressed myself. After getting dressed, I opened the door and prepared to go out. Who would have thought that Snow White would directly hug me from behind? Phuong Vien, sorry, the past life question has not been answered. In this life I answer you. I didn't let her finish her sentence, so I directly removed her hand. No need to say more. Before I died in my previous life, I already knew the answer. Having loved her for 50 years, I can't love her anymore. Please forgive me. In this life, can we be considered strangers? We are all young now, just 18 years old. Gradually, she will forget me. The person you don't love, you have regrets in your past life. I also have regrets. In this life, let's make up for our regrets, okay? White as snow, red eyes, tears flowing down, shaking head continuously. No, I'm your husband. 50 years of love, can you bear it? I swallowed my saliva bitterly and said, I can't bear it. That's definitely not possible, but I don't want to go down the same path again. I can't bear it. White as snow wiped her tears, then said with firm eyes, I know you don't believe me. In my previous life, you treated me well for 50 years. In this life, in return, I treated you well for 50 years. No matter what I said, she wouldn't listen. But I can't believe her. Has she come back to life? Can she not go find her childhood friend that she always misses? Vong Dang. Dad saw me and Snow White coming down the stairs together, and he immediately looked happy. Come on, son, daughter-in-law, I've already made breakfast for you. I glared at my father, then took a dumpling and angrily left. White as Snow also held a dumpling and followed me. I run, she runs too. I stopped, she stopped too. Makes me very upset. In my previous life, why didn't I find out that she was so annoying? For half a month, she always followed me. I was playing soccer, and she was on the side waiting for me in the sun. I went online. She immediately turned on the computer and sat next to me watching a movie. Even when I went to the bathroom, she had to wait outside. Suddenly, the whole school was in a stir, not understanding. A super student with top achievements in the whole school. Why does he have to hang around a loser like me all day? There are also rumors that I am from a rich family. White like Snow wants to cling to me. Snow White didn't pay attention to these things and continued to follow me every day. Until one day, Snow White didn't go to school. Without her by my side, I feel more comfortable. Even after school ended, she didn't come. Because it's the end of the month, Friday has 2 days off. With the university entrance exam approaching, some close friends from my class invited me out to dinner. Otherwise, everyone will go to their own place after college, and there won't be many more opportunities. Today there was no Snow White following me. I happily agreed to go with them to a popular restaurant. It's not expensive here, and there's a lot of food. Students like to go to places like this. After eating at 10 o'clock, we stood on the side of the road to catch a bus. Suddenly a friend patted my shoulder, then pointed to the door of a hotel and said to me, Mr. Phuong, look, isn't that Snow White, the one who has been pursuing you for half a month now? I looked in the direction he pointed, only to see Snow White and Vong Dang, the two of them talking and laughing, walking out of the hotel. I don't know why, my heart suddenly felt like it was stuck on a needle. During this time, being together, Snow White changed a lot, treating me strangely well, making me once doubt 50 years ago in my previous life. Did she really love me? But it seems I'm thinking too much. Just then, Snow White also saw me. Her face stiffened, then quickly ran towards me. Vong Dang also followed her. I smiled coldly at her. I haven't graduated from high school yet, and I'm already in such a hurry, hanging on me while I go to the hotel with this childhood friend. If I'm not wrong, he's not even 18 years old yet, right? Snow White is only 18 years old now. Vong Dang is 1 year younger than her. At this age, without a driver's license, driving electric motorbikes all day, hanging out with gangsters, and now going to hotels with Snow White. What kind of good person can he be? White as Snow saw my cold face and quickly explained. Gwen, I heard you say. White as Snow, do you feel like you're fake? I told you before, if God gives you a chance, you should cherish your childhood friend and stop messing with me. Just then, a taxi came. I waved to the car, then coldly snorted, got in the car, and told the driver to drive quickly. In the car, I still couldn't hold back my tears. After all, I have loved Bach like Snow for 50 years. Now seeing Snow White and the other man coming out of the hotel, although it's hard to accept, what can be done? You obviously want to stay away from her. Why do you keep meddling endlessly? When I got home, my father came out to greet me and asked, White as Snow, why don't you come back with me? For the past half-month, Snow White has been at my house with me after school. I sighed, then told my dad, I want to go out for a trip. Wait until the university entrance exam. Then I'll come back. Because my tone and facial expression said it all, my father said nothing more. He nodded and did not say he would book a plane ticket for me. Because according to his personality, if Snow White asked, he would definitely say I bought a plane ticket myself. Going to the beach, because my father said my mother's only wish before she died was to go to the beach to see the sea once. In my previous life, I fulfilled my father's will and resolved his bones. The two of them went down to the sea, but in this life I couldn't let my father go so soon, so I could only take my mother away, bringing with me a jar of her ashes. The plane flew all night to the coast. I carried a jar of my mother's ashes with me and traveled around the coastal cities, finally arriving at the city that my mother always cherished, the city of Tissue. My mother is from here. Because of love, she married my father. Being able to marry my mother, it can be said that my father practiced 10,000 years to get the blessing. Now the Luke family's cosmetics company, many products are related to my mother, so my father always wants to bring the family's products to the world. At sunset, I held my mother's ashes, sat on the sand, and watched the sunset. Not far away, on a chair, there was a mother and child. The boy is about 15 to 16 years old and seems to be in love. The boy cried and said to his mother, Mom, why doesn't the girl I like me? Is there really a girl in this world who likes me? The boy's mother patted his head, smiled and said, Idiot, the first time I met you was a girl over 20 years old. Hearing that, my heart tightened and my tears kept falling. If my mother knew that I had been miserable all my life loving someone who didn't love me for 50 years, she would definitely be heartbroken. Suddenly, I couldn't hold back anymore. My tears mixed with snot. Mom, what have I done that's not good? I've loved her for 50 years, 50 years. Is her heart really a stone? Is someone like me really not worthy of love? I miss you. I hugged my mother's ashes, tears continuously falling. Suddenly, a cry was heard next to me. On my urn, there is another hand. Mom, don't worry. In this life, I will take good care of Phuong Vien, I swear. Hearing that, I turned my head to look back. It was Bok Nu Tuet. She hugged my mother's ashes with both hands, sobbing. I instinctively wanted to stand up. She hugged me directly, crying and begging. Phuong Vien, give me a chance. Can you listen to me? I'm done. If you still want to leave, I promise I will never bother you again. I didn't say anything but held my mother's ashes and looked toward the setting sun. Bok Nu Tuet knew I was giving her a chance, so she quickly wiped away her tears and said with red eyes, Phuong Vien, I know in my heart you always thought that I liked Vong Dang. In my previous life as well, in this life too. You were wrong, so wrong. I never said I liked Vong Dang. I also don't know who you heard say that you and Vong Dang were childhood sweethearts, growing up together since childhood. That's true, but who says childhood sweethearts must like each other? In my previous life, at first I didn't like you because I didn't want to be a tool for my father's marriage and cooperation with others. So I always don't have a good attitude towards you. But later when I got pregnant, didn't you realize that I treated you better? He asked for a divorce, but I also did not agree. I'm a bit of a stubborn woman, don't you realize that? The reason I say that is because I gradually like you. In my previous life, our company weighed heavily on my shoulders. I sometimes have to go abroad to perform. It's really tiring, I know you treat me well. But every time I come home tired, I just want to lie down and rest. Furthermore, I really don't like expensive brands and jewelry. Didn't you realize that the ring and bracelet I'm wearing are the things you first bought for me when I took you shopping? When she said that, I suddenly remembered that even though both of our families were very rich, she never wore the expensive jewelry I bought, but always wore the things I bought for her at roadside stalls. The first time she saw me stunned, she continued, after decades of living together, even the ice has melted. What's more, you treat me so well. In my previous life, before I died, I asked you if you loved me. At that time I hesitated. But this hesitation doesn't mean I don't love you. I'm not good at expressing it. It's always been like that. Even though it's fake, I'm still speechless. At that time, I was thinking about how to arrange the language. As a result, he said, Bok Nu Tuet sobbed, still raising her hand, not using much force to hit me. Who told you to die so quickly? Without my permission, how could you die? You haven't said anything yet. I'm already dead. At that time, I wanted to tell you. I love you. I really love you. I, Bok Nu Tuet, love you, Phuong Vien. He died that day. I cried all night, cried until I fell asleep. When I woke up, I discovered I was alive again. In this life, I won't let you go and find me. I have to take the initiative to find you. As a result, you, this bastard, were either aggressive towards me, then screamed at me, and treated me coldly. That day, after playing football, I realized that you were also alive again. I know that in my previous life, because of you, I was very tired. But aren't you tired? I would like to give you 2 sons and 2 daughters, and at the same time help you manage the Luke family's company. Can't you understand me? After speaking, she threw herself into my arms, sobbing. Listening to her talk, I gradually remembered my past. Although she is always neither hot nor cold towards me, she is very thoughtful towards her family. When the Bok family became a great force, she did not forget to pull the Phuong family up. Other than treating me poorly, everything seemed fine. Looking at Bok Nu Tuet crying nonstop, in my heart, I sighed. His hand was still on her back, comforting her. After a while, she got better, raised her head, and said to me, "Before, at the hotel, it wasn't what you think." Vong Dang's grandparents came from the countryside. Because the house didn't have enough room, I took them to the hotel to rent a room. Vong Dang only went with me. Furthermore, Vong Dang and I have only had a normal relationship up until now. We were childhood friends, grew up together, but never had male-female feelings. Vong Dang also pointed out treat me like a sister. Don't believe me? Now immediately go back to your hometown with me. My friends, relatives, and parents in the countryside all know. In my previous life, I heard people say that her parents separated her from her childhood friend and forced her to marry me, but I never went to investigate or ask. This is also one of the things I regret the most. Seeing my hesitation, Bok Nu Tuet took out her phone and made a call, shouting into the phone, "Come here now, let Chow Vong Dang, not far from behind the trash can, trot over." Ms. Bok Nu Tuet directly hugged me and declared her sovereignty. Brother-in-law Vong Dang seemed a bit scared and quickly called me brother-in-law. Later, under Vong Dang's explanation, I learned that his parents rarely controlled him. If it weren't for Bok Nu Tuet, Vong Dang would not be a racing teenager but a street thug. Furthermore, Vong Dang has someone he likes, the daughter of the owner of a technician's shop that he often goes to, who is the same age as him. The two met, and when they were old enough to get married. At this time, I realized that in my previous life, Vong Dang married Bok Nu Tuet and invited me to go with him. At that time, I was angry and did not go, but the person I wanted to marry was the daughter of the technician shop owner. It turned out that people liked that girl from an early age. Because at first, the landlady did not agree with her daughter having sex with Vong Dang, a man without a job, and always stopped her. So later, Vong Dang went back to school and passed the entrance exam to a normal university. The new owner agreed. After understanding everything, it seemed like the problem in my heart had been resolved. The sun has also set now. Bok Nu Tuet looked at me very seriously and said, "In this life, I don't plan to play the violin anymore. I just want to fulfill my father's will and bring my mother's cosmetic products to the world. Phuong Vien, can you give me this opportunity?" I was in a very good mood, hugged my mother's ashes, stood up, and went straight to the hotel. Seeing that Bok Nu Tuet didn't follow, I turned around and saw her standing still in the same place, looking at my back. I called out, "Let's go. Go back to the room by the beach. It's very cold at night. Don't catch a cold." Bok Nu Tuet immediately smiled brightly, ran to me, put her arm around me, and rested her head on my shoulder. Vong Dang also trotted over at this time. "Sister, brother-in-law, I don't have an ID card yet, so I can't rent a room. You two already have a room. What should I do?" Bok Nu Tuet pointed into the distance and smiled mischievously. "Not far away, there is a bridge where you can spend the night. Tonight is the most important day for me and my brother-in-law. I can't worry about you." Having finished speaking, Bok Nu Tuet quickly pulled me and ran towards the hotel. A few months later, I smiled looking at the 2 college admission notices in my hand. I didn't pass at a key university, I only passed at a normal university. After all, I only had 3 months of studying, so even if I were a resurrected person, I couldn't do anything more. This is still thanks to Bok Nu Tuet's help in the final period. Otherwise, at most you will only be able to pass a second-class university. But Bach knew Tuet, in this last period of time, loved me sweetly. Good mood, good condition, directly won the valedictorian position. But she didn't go to the best university in the country and chose to study at the same school as me. Bach knew Tuet was next to me, kissed me, smiled and said, "In this life, I will give birth to 2 more children for you, okay?" I nodded. "Okay, love you for 50 years, love you for another 50 years, does it matter?"